Have you ever been curious as to what goes on behind the scenes in order to run a Division I top 25 football team? Well, today you're going to find out. Please welcome Ryan Dorchester. Ryan is the head of assistant AD, general manager at University of Houston football. He was 14 seasons at West Virginia. In his last 5, he's been here. 5, right?
This is year 4.
Year 4. Welcome, Ryan. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And Ryan was actually a client of mine back 4 years ago.
2019.
Lives in Siena, our neighborhood. So thanks for coming. Ryan, so this, I think your job is like one of the most interesting jobs, especially for sports fans, because what we see is on TV, the interviews, all of that. You're running, I'd like you to jump into what you actually do, but you're running kind of like the foundation to me of the football team. Like you're like making sure everybody's where they're supposed to be, the schedules, and you have like so many things on your plate that you're doing. So I'm very, very curious about how this is going to go and the questions you're going to answer lots of questions I've got for you. So tell me again, what do you do? If you could kind of generalize it, and then we can dive into some of the.
Yeah, it's a question I get a lot. Is like, what do you do? And there was a Ron White bit, Lewis Black bit a long time ago that I heard, where if you can't describe in one sentence what you do, it's illegal, right? And I don't know if I could tell you in one sentence what I do.
Is it illegal?
It's not. I can assure you that. NCAA rules are not broken.
Yes, that's right.
No, I help run the football program, which that entails making sure all the different auxiliary units kind of communicate with one another. Provide, Coach Holgerson with somebody that he can come to, with any type of question. What Division I-A football programs look like 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago and what they look like today are dramatically different. There's a lot of tentacles, and I think it's almost impossible for one single person at a lot of those places to control it all. It's just too big. And even at the places, everyone thinks of the Blue Bloods, the Alabama's, the Ohio States, places that are kind of wired to be really successful. Even those guys have guys that help them with this. So that's really what the kind of nuts and bolts of my job is to help coach run the program. And that starts with, helping make sure our strength training, our nutrition, our athletic training, our academics, our recruiting, our creative department, administration, donors, now you in the world of NIL, like all these things, somebody's got to have a touch point. And at the end of the day, like a head football coach, they still have the word coach in their title.
Right.
They have to spend time coaching football.
Right.
And, there's only so many hours in the day that you can fill with this, and those things don't stop. So there's questions that have to be answered, there's decisions that have to be made, and you can't go running in every 10 seconds interrupting, the head coach if he's trying to coach football with what should we do here, what should we do there, and thankfully, I've been in a position where I've been with Coach Holgerson long enough to where he trusts me to make a lot of those decisions. So, try to, do the best I can to help him keep the train on the tracks.
So are you are you running if it was a business,
mm-hmm.
Are you kind of running the business of it? Because he's like, his job is as you said, the coaching, but then he's like the CEO in a sense of it. But, I guess that's more of my question. Is that kind of more of that? Are you doing coaching too?
No.
Okay.
And my job is to try to help those auxiliary departments that I kind of described communicate with one another.
That's a lot of things. I was just, as you were listing all that,
a lot of things, and it needs to be kind of a streamlined communication up to him. So those people come to me with issues, problems, good things at times as well, and then try to funnel the message up to him and filter out kind of what he needs to know, what he needs to deal with, because you only get so many hours in the day, where me and him are at the point where like we don't talk a ton, and when he comes, he'll come to me and say, what do you got? And I got bullet points on, hey, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Here's what it is. Okay, here, what do you want to do? Good. Let's go.
So what is like a day? What's a day in your? So if you let me ask you this: if you were to go to another business, what would be the title that what you're doing represents for that other business? Let's go. You go to Apple. You're working for Apple.
Right.
What would be that title they would have there, just to kind of correlate it somehow?
I would say like, maybe just because they've been in the news a lot lately. Oh, this is gonna be a bad example. I was gonna go England, like you have like the king, and then you have the prime minister,
Right?
Kind of like that.
Got it.
And it's not fair to necessarily say Dana's just a figurehead and doesn't really do anything, because that's obviously far from the truth. But he's obviously
I get it. That makes sense.
He's the boss. He's over top of everything. But then somebody's got to do a lot of help with a lot of the day to day, like things that he doesn't need to concern himself with.
Right.
And it's like I said, there's only so much time, and there's certain things that just you don't need to bring to the head coach's attention because they're not life or death of the program. Somebody just needs to make a decision to move forward.
Got it. Totally makes sense. So what's like a day to day look for you? I mean, is it different every day? Do you have a like kind of normal week schedule?
Yeah, the world of football is very much routine.
Yeah,
and in college football, you're normally playing on Saturdays. Some weeks you play on Fridays, Thursdays. So it really depends on what our day looks like based upon what day of the week it is.
Sure.
And then if we're playing on a different day, our schedule adjusts. If we play on Friday, what Thursday to you is really Friday to us, and then you just kind of work backwards from there. So it just depends. In a normal week, Saturday we play the game. Sunday we come in and we get rid of the game, meet the players, lift them, go over a little bit of practice.
Sunday, get rid of the game.
Get rid of the game. So if we played on Saturday, we bring our guys in on Sunday, and we watch the game with them. We talk about what happened, and then we move on.
You watch the whole game?
They'll watch, like the position coaches, as a staff, you watch the whole game.
Right.
Then you come, you meet, you assess it, what you did well, what you think you need to improve on, all three sides of the ball. And then you go and meet with the players, and as position groups or potentially as like a side of the ball, they'll watch the whole game.
Right.
And you make, notes, corrections, things that you obviously need to do better, things that you did well. Then we go out and practice for a little bit, and then we move on. Monday they're off because we're preparing for our next game.
So Monday, players don't come in and do anything?
No, it's academics, and like they'll be around because, it's just, if you want to be a really good football player, you're going to come in and do extra. I mean, it's it's just kind of one of the way things work.
Right.
If you do the bare minimum, you're going to get the bare minimum. So they'll come in, they'll watch film, but Monday's all about moving on to the next opponent because there's only so many days in the week. I mean, you have 8 months of an off season, and then when you get into season, you typically have 7 days to prepare for somebody. So it happens fast. And then Tuesday, we practice in the morning, prep for the opponent.
And game plans are set at that point.
Monday's all a big game planning day.
For coaches.
For coaches. Yeah. You start on it Sunday, and then Monday they spend basically the entire day coming up with, here's kind of what we want to do. You go out to practice on Tuesday, see what you like, what you didn't like, and then they'll continue to tweak stuff, throughout the course of the week. And then Wednesday we practice in the evening. So we have a long break between our Tuesday morning practice and our Wednesday evening practice. So coaches spend a lot of time kind of fine-tuning the game plan. Wednesday you go out, you want to have a really good practice. And then Thursday we come back in the afternoon. It's a little bit lighter. And then Friday we do a walkthrough, and then Saturday you go play.
Gosh. It sounds like it's so quick.
It's incredibly quick.
So I'm going to ask you, here's another question is, well, I guess you'll tell me if it's a good question, but your schedule, when do those come out for the next year?
It depends on what conference you're in.
Okay.
Like ours, being an American, has been released late February, early March, which is pretty late.
Right.
Like the Big 12, where we're going, typically comes out mid-December publicly.
When do y'all go to Big 12, by the way?
Next year.
Okay, so next year we'll start. Okay.
Next year will be in the Big 12. But like internally, you will most likely know who you're playing late October, early November.
So when that happens, I know you're like, you said you have a week to prepare, but do you have someone that's like going and prepping for, we don't even know where we're playing, but we know the teams, and start learning those players and learning their how they run calls or anything? Or are you just
Not at this point for next
year? You're not.
Yeah, no.
I mean, how soon are you doing that though?
You do it in the summer.
Got it. Okay.
Like it's a summer prep thing where you start looking ahead, but you don't want to get too far ahead of yourself. Like you'll do 3 to 4 weeks is typically kind of the cutoff that you'll do some summer prep, because if you're preparing for a team you're playing week 5, what they looked like last year, they could be completely different.
Yeah.
Come week 5 based upon what they did this year.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So you're essentially wasting a lot of time. So, we'll do like our first couple opponents, but the nice thing when you get into a conference and you have a somewhat repetitive conference schedule is you get used to seeing the same people over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Which we're going to obviously have something that's going to be a transition to going. We were in the Big 12 when we were at West Virginia, and now we're going back, where most of the guys that we played against, well, probably all that we played against when we were at West Virginia are gone.
Right.
But some of the coaches are the same, so you kind of have a feel for how those teams play, but a lot of them have changed over. So it's teams that are going to have dramatically different personalities, how coordinators call things. So it's going to be, again, something that we have to learn all over again.
So all right, let's just say when you're Thursday, let's say you're playing on a Saturday, Thursday, what does the schedule look like? What are you helping? Because you were telling me this before about like the travel schedule of like when you go away, like the routine you have for that. What does that typically look like? So like you're going to play somewhere, you're flying away to go play.
Yeah. So if we're traveling, you just start working backwards from 6:15, get to the hotel, and everything works backwards from that, and that sets your day.
Right.
So if it takes 2 hours to fly there, if it's going to take you approximately 15 minutes from the time you land to get all your stuff off, and then it's going to take you 20 minutes, or say 15, just keep the math easy, to get to the hotel. So that's 2.5 hours that now from the time you take off that you got to build in to when you're going to get there. And then you're going to have to account for the travel from when you leave the facility to get to the airport, and then how long it's going to take to screen you.
Right.
So then you just start working back for, okay, then we practice for this long. It's going to take us this long to eat. It's going to take this long to meet, and then it sets your day.
So game there is on the game is on Saturday, and y'all fly in on what, Thursday or Friday? Friday night?
Yep.
Stay at the hotel. Have a team meal, I'm assuming.
Yeah, when we get to the hotel, we eat. Our hotel, like we do all of our not final, but like the majority of our prep we do here. So when we get to the hotel on Friday night, and teams do this differently.
Right.
We get there, we eat, and we kind of relax.
Right.
We try to, at some point you have to do something to reduce a little bit of the anxiety, the tension. So we let guys kind of hang out really on Friday.
Then go into the town, or
No. They don't leave the hotel. We let them enjoy each other's company.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's they're not going anywhere.
Right.
Good heavens.
Well, you hear these stories in the news where
Yeah, pros do it.
No, but I feel like I hear it in college where like these athletes went rogue and did this the
bowl games.
Yeah.
Bowl games is
it.
typically when you let them go out, and then when you're there you cross your fingers and hope everybody comes back. But we keep them there, just let them kind of relax, chill. If it's a Saturday, there's games on Friday.
Are you doing any football prep at all on that Friday night you get there?
Very little. No, it's nothing organized. Like some position groups will get together and go over certain things, but like as a team, we're not doing anything major. It's trying just to kind of get guys relaxed. Then Saturday we'll wake up, and depending on when kickoff is.
What if it's like 11 o'clock? You still aren't doing anything that morning, or you are?
We'll do it all in the morning.
Super early then, right?
Yeah.
The game's 11.
If it's 11 a.m. kick, like you're up, we're ready to go. We're starting fast. But, on Tuesday, we're on the practice field at 8:30 in the morning. So, like our guys
kind of used to that.
They're kind of conditioned. We practice at all different times throughout the course of the week. So there's really not a start time that we could be playing at that we haven't had some sort of practice at in terms of preparing to play at that time. So it's not an excuse that, we can give our guys or that they would want to make. So we do all that stuff Saturday morning, kind of get them amped up for, final walkthroughs, final meetings. But in all reality, if you haven't figured out what you're about to go do come Saturday morning, you got problems.
Got it. Are your players having, what type of meal are they eating on the morning of the game? Like, is it a big meal or is it like just pretty light?
So it depends. I mean, it's a lot of the nitty gritty, right? So if you're,
I'm curious.
if you're starting at like 11,
yeah,
we'll do like a light continental,
uh-huh.
which will have nothing hot except for like grits and oatmeal when they wake up and some sandwiches.
Nothing hot?
Nothing hot when they wake up. Then we'll do meetings, do a walkthrough, and then we'll eat a pregame meal, which will have anything from like eggs, waffles, like steak cut up, and then it'll have pasta, chicken, because some guys are superstitious and they're like, before we play a game, we have
Carbs.
to eat. Yeah, have to eat carbs.
What time is that before the game though? When they're having that meal?
Like if we're playing at 11, we're doing that at 7:30.
Okay, so they're not eating after that though. That meal.
No, they're not eating. There's no meal after that. No,
Right.
And then it just depends on, like, if we're playing at 6:30 at night, like we did last week, we'll let them sleep till 10:30 is when we'll start meetings. So from 9 to 10:30, there'll be like a full spread breakfast. They get omelets, all that. They'll go, they'll eat, then we'll meet, we'll walk through, then they'll get like an hour or so off, then they'll come back down and they'll have pregame meal, which is basically the same spread I just said, minus like the eggs part and the waffles. So like steak, chicken, pasta, and guys eat that, and then we go to the game.
When do they eat their biggest meal?
The Friday before, like that Friday night meal, is really the one that's important. So when we first get there, it's like steak, chicken, mashed potatoes, vegetables, and then there's pasta bars. So like it's action stations where you can go up and have your own specialized pasta made, which has got meatballs, shrimp, seafood Alfredo, chicken, pepperoni,
and like I want to know this, the guy that's eating the most, which I'm assuming is some type of lineman, how much food is he actually eating? Like, what do you think he's consuming calorie wise?
That's an interesting question. The best eater that we have on our team right now is a guy named Derek Parrish, number 0, who unfortunately is out for the season. Ruptured his bicep. We had a contest a year ago, a meat eating contest. His nickname's Meat too, so this is kind of fitting. And he ate 110 ounces of steak.
What?
110 ounces in one sitting. And we were at the Taste of Texas, free advertising. And he got to the point where it was him and one other guy, and he just said, tell me how much he's eating. I'll just eat more than him. Like, and
right.
From a competition perspective, there's few things more demoralizing than when you're competing against somebody and they just said, I'm going to beat you. I'm just going to keep doing this till you quit. And then on his way home from the meat eating contest, he stopped and got a Krispy Kreme donut.
Oh my Lord. And how much does he weigh?
250. He is a human muscle.
Wow.
So one of my favorite players that we've ever had, phenomenal kid. He's got an opportunity to come back next year. I hope he does. But he is pound for pound as strong as any guy in the 18 years I've been doing this. I've ever been around him. He's a 600-plus pound squatter. He's a 450-pound bencher, and he cleaned 425 like it was nothing. Which, if anybody's ever tried to just lift 425 pounds off the floor, it's a lot of weight.
What is the average? What's the average lineman? How many are they eating calories a meal or a day?
I'm not a big.
If you had to take a guess, 120 ounces of steak is. It's pretty lean, but
couple thousand. When we go and have a practice.
Yeah.
If you're down 5% in terms of body weight, like, you have to eat with the strength staff. And guys, what you find is, because you track, we weigh them in, weigh them out for everything. So you find that it's kind of, different guys will lose different amounts of weight depending on like what kind of sweaters they are. And obviously in Houston it's hot, so they lose a lot of water weight. And you'll know fairly quickly which guys do a pretty good job of putting it back and which don't. So, yeah, I mean, it's one thing that you wish you could do more of is feed them, but, they're only up there so much. Right? And, I mean, the most expensive thing that we do for our guys is feed them.
Right.
Feeding we have 117 players on the team right now. Feeding them any sort of meal is pretty expensive.
Yeah, right. What do you had mentioned like your favorite thing about your job is like seeing some of these players who go get drafted in the NFL or whatever. Tell me about a story that's kind of cool with that, or tell me something about how do you see that process play out? And I'm sure it's rewarding when you put all that work into one player and then you see him get to do something cool like playing the NFL.
Yeah, just to know you had a little small part. I mean, me personally, my influence on any one of them individually is not probably that great, but just to know that you were there for something, is neat. I mean, it's these kids living out their dreams. They all grew up, or most of them grew up wanting to be an NFL football player, and to see that actually kind of come true is pretty rewarding. I mean, the first thing you need to do is graduate, which is something that we stress highly in our program. If you're going to come to college and you're going to do all this and you don't graduate, you've just wasted the experience.
Right.
Now, I'm personally somebody that still believes in higher education.
Right.
I think it has value. Even if you're never going to use your degree to do anything, at least proves that you can do it. But then to see them, get to where they really want to go and have that shot to play professional football. Recently we had, Logan Hall. He was a second-round pick. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a guy that when COVID happened, he was 260 pounds. And when we came out of quarantine, he was down to like 240. I mean, it just didn't look like a guy that was going to be a good college player, let alone an NFL guy. And to see him just like making a conscious commitment saying, I'm going to be a guy in the weight room, I'm going to change my body, I'm going to get bigger. And then over the course of 2 years, go from that guy to being a guy that was, a second-round draft choice and playing for the Tampa Bay Bucks is pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's a rewarding experience to watch.
Cool. What's your, that was your favorite thing. What do you find your most difficult part of your job? Because it sounds like you got a million things on your plate.
Managing people. I think that's the hardest thing, but the most important thing.
Meaning like just the overall, like their personalities or?
Yeah. I mean, you got in an organization like this, you got a lot of people and you want them to function at their highest level and finding what kind of makes them good and what they, what you got to tell them. You can't treat them all the same.
Right.
And trying to find what's going to make this person be at their best so that our team can be at its best is the hardest but the most important thing.
Who do you think has the hardest job on the team?
Quarterback's pretty tough.
Yeah.
I mean, whether you're a head coach or a quarterback, you as they like to say, you probably get too much credit and too much blame, and I think both are probably true.
Right.
So yeah, it's a unique burden, one that if you haven't done it, it's hard. There's obviously a lot of people that are passionate about football and college football and think they know and understand, but if you haven't sat in the chair or been back in the pocket when there's a bunch of big people trying to try to rip your head off, it's a little different experience.
And I could imagine from when you guys are on a good winning streak and things are looking good, the vibe and the mindset and the energy around the team is great, I'm sure. But when you're not doing that and you've had a couple losses, what do you guys do to turn it around? Because if you had a couple and a couple bad losses or whatever, and you're you got the press, people writing up stories all the time, that you got to keep the players encouraged, you got to keep your coaches encouraged. How do you turn it around? It just seems like that's such a, not just from the standpoint of correcting plays or your performance, but just mindset's such a big deal.
Yeah. And it gets influenced by a lot of different angles. And now it's worse than ever, and it's not going to get better to where you can pick up your cell phone and there's 1,000 people that'll have an opinion about what you're doing, and they're certainly entitled to their opinion, but it doesn't make them right. Just because they say something doesn't make it true either. In trying to explain that to young kids or even coaches, confidence is such a big thing.
Right.
We can do the same thing over and over again, and it works and it works and it works. And then for no real explicable reason other than maybe just dumb luck, it just didn't work here.
Right.
And then trying to get people to wrap their minds around this just didn't work because of happenstance doesn't really feel good. Nobody really wants to accept that. They want to try to dig deeper and find some greater meaning. And sometimes it's actually quite simple, but you go on the internet and they're not telling you that. Right? You're the best coach in the world. Well, we were calling the same plays last year.
Right.
We had some different players. We were playing different teams, but it was the same stuff. We haven't gotten, our thought process that was so effective then hasn't gotten worse now. So trying to get people to still have confidence in what they're doing. You used to say, don't read the media, ignore the press clippings. I don't think that's realistic.
Right.
In today's day and age, everybody sees it. Even kids that don't have social media hear it somehow. I mean, somebody's going to tell you. So it's trying to, if the results don't validate what you're doing, trying to keep the confidence up.
Right.
That's where I see it drop more than anywhere.
And is there something you guys do to try and make that happen?
That's the magical question, right? I mean, part of it is practice and going out, and it's why practice is so important because, practice is just like studying for a test. If we've all taken tests, if when you go into a test that you had in school, however long you've ever been out of school, but if you prepared well, like
right.
You were going to go in, you had confidence that you were going to do well. That's practice in football.
Right.
If you don't practice well, you go into the game. I mean, it may happen on rare occasions where you go out and play well, but it's not going to be just magical.
Right.
We're just going to flip on a light switch, and we're just going to, all of a sudden, we haven't done this well all week, but now we're going to do it good when there's an opponent there that's trying to beat us, right? So the best formula that I've seen is getting back to practicing well. So what do you do as coaches? You try to set yourself up to practice well.
Got it. So practice is kind of your reset in a sense.
It's the thing that can kind of snap you out of a loss. I mean, a loss is like the worst hangover you've ever had.
Right.
And unless you've been in there, that's hard to, to explain to somebody that feeling of, kind of dread. You're angry. You sit there and you second guess everything that's gone on. I mean, it's like, you've heard it probably said with coaches where they remember their worst losses much more clearer than any of their great wins is so true.
Yeah.
Because the great wins that you have, you move on from them pretty quick. Unless it's like the last game of the year, but like most of the time, because we won, we're on to the next one, we're on to the next one. The losses hang with you longer. You sit there and you replay it. What could I have done here? What could I have done there? How could this have been different? And so you remember them with a lot more clarity. So the best way that I've seen to kind of snap you out of that is you got to go back out there and you got to practice.
Yeah. So let's talk about Coach Holgerson for a second. So he seems like a very fiery guy, and I mean, especially when the refs make a bad call, that's always fun to watch. And it wasn't the last game; it was a game before that. Oh, they made a horrible call, and he let him know that.
Yeah.
But when you take a loss, I'm just curious, how does he coach up players at the end of the game when you take a hard loss? He's got to come in and actually tell them what they did wrong, and then he's also got to transition to the next game. So how does he do that?
Yeah, I mean, after the game, it's typically short and sweet. I mean, the last thing anybody wants to do, after a disappointing outcome is sit there and listen to a long diatribe about what just transpired, right?
Right.
And everyone's emotional.
Right.
You should be. In football, unlike the rest of the professional sports, there's not very many games.
Right.
I mean, it's NBA 82.
Yeah.
So football's what, sixth of that?
Yeah.
Fifth. So
baseball 183.
Yeah, 162.
62, is that what it is? Yeah.
Yeah. So,
you're right. You're right.
Yeah,
You're right.
and that's like a tenth.
Yeah.
Right. So everything in our world is life or death every week.
Right.
Even the NFL, like you can drop a couple and still be okay. I mean,
Right.
heck, there's teams that have losing records that make the playoffs.
Right.
Right. There's coaches that have losing records after 1 year and get fired in college football.
Right.
So, it hurts so bad, and so you don't want to do a whole lot in that moment because, again, everyone's emotional and you're probably going to say some things that you don't really mean or know, right? So that's why you go in and watch the video, and typically with him, after losses, it's honest reflection. Why did we lose? What did we fail to do? And trying to attack certain areas, whether it's, we did things that were undisciplined. We did things that, put us in bad situations, right? We didn't play complementary football. Or maybe in some instances, they were just better than us. It's normally it lands in kind of one of those buckets, but you sit there, you talk about it as a staff as to, what you want to assess, how the game went, and then you try to go out and emphasize those points that got you beat the previous week and try to correct them for the next week. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. In my experience, if you want to have magical seasons, you need two uncontrollable factors to go your way. You need luck and health.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know how to garner luck, and I don't know how to keep guys healthy, right? When you start playing the game of football, it's a very heavy contact sport. Things are going to happen. Some years you can go the entire season like we did last year and lose basically nobody of consequence to a season-ending injury. In some years, like this year, you can have 10 guys that are out for the season that you're counting on to play.
Right.
Luck of the draw.
Let me ask you another question. NCAA has obviously been making a lot of changes in the last few years, from the playoff system to what's it called now, where we pay players?
NIL.
Yeah, that was obviously a gigantic one.
Yeah.
How has that played an effect with you guys? And then you guys are moving conferences.
Yeah, it's if you had a problem with change, you'd have a problem with a lot of what's going on, and I'm not going to necessarily say that anything in its own little lens is bad.
Right.
I think that as a sport, and I'm just talking football, we've done so many things so quickly that...
Meaning like big changes?
Big changes that we, again, as a sport, haven't understood the rule of unintended consequences that's taken place with some of this stuff before we've allowed it to play out.
Yeah.
So I think that it needs to kind of settle a little bit, and I don't know if the powers that be will allow it to do that before we see what it ends up being in the end. I mean, my opinion is it's going to end up being the Power 5 conferences are going to have their own playoff.
Yeah.
And it's going to be their own separate deal. And then there's going to be, call it the current group of 5 is going to exist. And then there's going to be the FCS that's going to exist, and they're all going to be separate entities.
Yeah.
I mean, you've kind of seen it, where you had the polls, right? And then we had the BCS, which got us 2 teams.
Right.
And that wasn't enough. So then we had to go to the playoff, which got us 4 teams. And now that's not enough. So we're going to go and expand that to 12 teams.
When does the 12 start?
I don't think the date's finalized yet. I mean, I think that's good. We're the only major sport that determines a champion in a very restricted format.
Yes, right.
It's a very inclusive club, and I think that's one thing that makes college football great is there can be upsets, and if everyone had to play all the way through week after week, is more often than not the team with the most talent and all that going to win? Sure. I mean, that's how it goes in like any professional sport, right? And but what makes the NCAA basketball tournament so great is the chance that anybody can go win it.
Right.
And for a sport that so many people care about, we don't have that. You know, the year begins, there's only, 10 teams?
Right.
Maybe not even that many that have a realistic chance to go win the national championship. And expanding the playoff may not make it easier for the rest of those teams, but it gives them a pathway.
Right.
It gives them hope.
Yeah, I mean, you had so many years where you had, I mean, what was when LSU and Bama have had to play each other, and other conferences are so pissed off because, it's two from the same, so many things.
Look at a team like Kansas this year, right? Kansas has been at the bottom of the Big 12 for 15 years.
Right.
And they have this unbelievable start to their season, and it's giving their team, their fan base, everything hope.
Right.
I saw their quarterback's out for the rest of the year, which is unfortunate because he's a tremendous player. But, they started – if you have a 12-team playoff, Kansas, after 5 weeks, their fans are thinking, hey, we got shot. And this is a team that's been at the basement forever, and that's, I think, what's something that college football has kind of missed that I think would be really good for it.
If there's a change that you could make in NCAA football today, and you were king for the day, and you got to make that change, what change do you think you'd make?
I would allow for coaches to be able to communicate to players on the field like they do in the NFL. Like have mics in the helmets.
Got it. How many can they have in the NFL? Can they have
There's one on each side.
Okay.
And if the guy that's, it's the quarterback on offense, and then somebody on defense, typically the middle linebacker, if they get knocked out, you can replace them. But to allow a coach to be able to directly communicate to a player on the field would be.
And why did they take that? Why is that not a thing?
Money. It's just.
Does it cost more to have the equipment?
Oh, yeah. Yes. The technology is just much more expensive.
But you'd think with all the money coming in NCAA, that would be not that big of a deal.
It's part of the issue with, and why I think what I said earlier, where it's going to all split, where you're going to have the Power 5 are going to do their own thing. Because if a Power 5 school who wants to play an FCS school to get a nice win, well, if the Power 5 school has that type of technology because they can afford it, but the FCS school doesn't, what do you do?
Right.
You can't take one away from the other, and so there hasn't been a really good solution to that problem.
Yeah.
But I think that would be something that would definitely help the college game.
When you guys schedule an opposing team to come play you that's maybe not going to be ranked as high, what is the typical cost that you guys pay out for that?
Depends. Like if they're a 1A school, it's typically nothing. It's just you trade off the series.
Because you're taking the risk that they could come in and beat you or something like that, or is it?
Yeah, but
because you see, like Alabama will play. You never even heard of the team.
They play. The SEC has an FCS bye week in November where they all play FCS schools, and they pay them millions of dollars to come.
Millions. A week.
Plural's probably not appropriate.
Okay.
But between 1 and 2, a lot of them,
right,
to come down there and play that game.
Is there a strategy behind who they're choosing?
They're trying to play teams they can beat.
Well, you're right.
Any SEC team is probably going to think they can beat any FCS team.
Right.
But it's to give them a not a bye, but an easier game before they got to play their final 2 at the end of the year. Like for us, we'll have to do that. If you're playing an FCS school, you typically have to enter into some sort of agreement from a financial standpoint. What that is, the Chris Pesman, our AD, deals with all that. But if they're 1A schools, it's typically kind of even,
right?
For us, as far as if we're going there, they're coming here, and just depending on if it's 1 for 1, 2 for 2, whatever it is.
Got it. One last question before we get to our little rapid fire is, so you were at Morgantown for how many years?
I was there for 15.
And that includes after you graduated?
Yes.
Okay. And it's quite an amazing atmosphere, but you also have like a town that's based on the college, right? Wouldn't you say that?
Yeah.
Versus here, it's a city. Houston's just so big.
Very big.
And we've got, 4 was it 4? Yes, 4 professional teams.
Are you counting the Dynamo?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I not count them?
It's your podcast. Count them whatever you want.
So you have 4 professional teams, and then you've got well, really Rice, UH,
Sam Houston.
Sam Houston. I mean, A&M is counted. I mean, I'm an Aggie, and I counted, and I have so many friends here. But Houston is like, I mean, it's not like Houston owns UH. I mean, they do, but it's not like the only school.
Right.
There's probably more Aggies than UH fans. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong in that in Houston. That's what I would think.
Yeah, I wouldn't
But
know.
it's such so I'm just curious the difference in like a college town versus here and how that adjustment's been for you. And then even like how has the difference in conferences been and like how, or difference in organizations, even maybe conference too. You're now going back to the Big 12 of how that's played out. Does that make sense, that question?
Yeah. West Virginia's, everything's wired around that university.
Right.
Morgantown wouldn't be on the map if it wasn't for WU. And with that comes a whole bunch of support pulling towards the university, its athletic programs to have success, which is great if you're doing well.
Right.
The inverse of that, if things aren't going swimmingly, it can be a very difficult place, and I think that just kind of comes with it. I don't blame anybody for that. That's part of being a fan, and you appreciate people that care. Like there's a level of relevancy, that in the world of college football that you want to get to, where if you're doing things and no one cares, are you really relevant? Probably not. Right. And at that place, everything you do matters.
Yeah.
At U of H, where it's a different dynamic because you have, Morgantown's a town of 60,000, right? This is a city of 6 million.
Right.
You're fighting for kind of your niche and what you want to do and how you want to get attention and exposure. And in order to do that, you have to be successful. I think what Houston has proven is it will support winners.
Yeah.
Right. Anybody will support winners. But Houston, this big city, you can carve out your niche and get your attention. If you do well, you stack wins and you're successful. And that's kind of been the goal as far as what we were trying to do. Here last year, we obviously had a really good season. And this year we've kind of had a very odd year to start the year. I mean, we've had 5 of our 6 games come down to the last snap.
It's crazy.
It's been
it is so like
you'll go a couple years without dealing with a game like that. We've had 5 of our first 6.
Yeah,
it's hard to explain.
That Texas Tech game was crazy. Yeah,
it's just added to the list, and so trying to get that balance and kind of carve out our niche. That's what we want to do. Moving to the Big 12 helps because I think that's where the University of Houston had whenever the Big 12 formed 30 odd years ago, it got left out. And I think there was a time where it kind of felt like it was on the back burner of things. And now getting back into the Big 12 or getting into the Big 12 has kind of forced it to ramp back up and put it on the front page, of news. Now you have a Power 5 institution here in town, and everything that comes with doing that is important. The support, the buildings, everything took, getting in a conference is great, and then winning it's kind of a different deal.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where we're at, is trying to get our program as good as we can get it to where we can be successful in the Big 12.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, thanks, Ryan. Let's do a little rapid fire. By the way, Ryan's drink of choice is good old ranch water.
It's easy, man. Texas.
I like that. I mean, I'm more of a bourbon guy, but I'm not going to turn it into ranch water either.
Yeah, it's a very refreshing summertime.
Yes. How's the weather been though for you comparatively to West Virginia?
It's a little different.
But I know you get the snow and all that stuff, but even in the summer, is it still cool there because it's mountain?
It's very pleasant.
Okay. Do you ever get humidity?
A little bit in August, but I mean, compared to what Houston is, it's not even comparable.
Yeah, I know. Hey, but right now is great.
Right now is okay.
I would say 7 months of the year I really like Houston. There's 3 months I can't stand the weather, but that's when I try to do vacation, go to Colorado or whatever.
Yeah, it's your opinion.
All right, here we go. Rapid fire questions. Favorite food?
Chicken Parmesan.
What town did you grow up in?
Cortland, Ohio.
Favorite dessert?
Red velvet.
What is your favorite store?
Ooh. I don't shop much. Grocery store.
What time do you wake up in the morning?
7.
What time do you go to bed?
11.
Favorite type of music?
Country.
If you had to pick your favorite Hogwarts house, which one would you pick?
I'll go Slytherin because I can't think of the other one's names.
Gryffindor?
Ah.
That was Slytherin, man.
I'm kind of a dark side guy.
Got it. Describe your style in one word.
Basic.
What were you afraid of when you were a kid?
A lot.
Really?
Yeah, it's not a overly brave child. Heights.
I'm kind of that way too. Do you enjoy performing in front of an audience?
Yeah.
Have you ever won a bet?
Yes.
What was the bet?
Best
bet.
I did very well at the Kentucky Derby this year.
Oh, nice. Really? Where do you do that at? Online or?
At the Kentucky Derby.
Oh, you went?
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Most fun thing I've ever done in my life.
Do you wear socks with sandals?
No.
Do you correct people's grammar?
Depending on the person.
Okay. All right. I'm going to do... Wait, where's my other ones here? Oh, I've lost my other ones. There it is. What celebrity annoys you the most? Or which celebrities annoys you the most?
I don't really get annoyed by celebrities.
Oh, I do so much.
I don't really pay them a whole lot of attention.
Favorite?
I mean, I think everybody's probably kind of done with the Kardashians.
Yeah.
I think that's an easy answer,
that's
but
that's what I'm saying. Favorite Disney character? Ooh, I know you got little kids, so you probably...
Yeah, probably. I'll go with Maui from Moana. He's a demigod.
I like that. That is a good one. I can't find my other ones. All right, but it's the last question I always ask, which is this: you're king for the day.
Mm-hmm.
Time is like gone, so you can, if you want to be somewhere, you can be there.
Mm-hmm.
Money's no object. You've got an unlimited bank account. Where would you? And you got only 24 hours. Where would you go? What would you do?
The most fun in terms of a day that I've ever had was at the Kentucky Derby. So
no money. I guess money's no object. You just be betting.
I would go and spend the entire day at a horse track on a major race weekend and be as happy as I could possibly be.
That's awesome. You know what's so funny, dude? For the first time ever, I do a little bit of sports betting here and there. First time ever, which by the way, I picked Houston money line on Friday, which whenever this is being recorded is Friday. And my buddy was like, there's no way Houston's going to win. And was it Memphis? Was that you're playing?
Yeah.
Yes. And 3 minutes, 33 seconds left in the game. He's like, you're gone. I won. Whatever. Dude, it was such a good feeling to watch that game.
First time I've ever been part of a game where we recovered an onside kick and came back and won.
Oh, really?
I take it back. I've done it twice. One was in 2005. That took 3 overtimes to do it, but that was number 2.
That's awesome. But I'd never done this, which was I was a real estate conference in Vegas with this company called Homelight, and I had Sunday. Our flight wasn't leaving until 7:30 at night, so I sat at the sports book all day long and just made little bets, like different little things, parlays, whatever. It was so fun.
Yeah,
and you're watching on these huge screens.
I don't bet on anything other than horses at the track.
Sure. I understand.
But it is that whole day, that experience being there was as much fun as I've ever had doing anything.
Cool. Hey, if anybody wants to find you online, you're only no Instagram.
No Instagram. Got rid of that in COVID.
So Twitter.
Twitter's where I live.
And what's your handle there?
At Dorchester Ryan.
So at Dorchester Ryan.
Yep.
Perfect. Well, thanks again for joining us. Thanks to our listeners for joining. Please make sure and take a moment to like and subscribe to our channel if you're watching on YouTube. And if you would be honored if you leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. And thank you, Ryan. And we will see you next time on The Closing Table.